Record. Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for another Sub-Industry Spotlight series. This is the series where I interview senior leaders in commercial real estate about their specific sub-industry, how it works, how they got there, and any advice they have for the next generation of women in commercial real estate. And I'm here today with Heidi McClenahan, who is one of the best and has been volunteering with the Gold Initiative for probably almost as long as I've been with the Goldie Initiative, which is over five, six. I've been here 7 years. I don't know, like 6, 7 years ago, I think you also started volunteering and have just been a powerhouse of a ally for the Goldie Initiative. And so, once again, thank you for volunteering your time and sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I will kick it off by saying, Heidi, if you could just do a brief high-level introduction of yourself, of a little bit about your background, and then I'll go to the icebreaker, but share with everybody who you are.
Sure. Well, hello, everyone, whomever is going to be listening to this. Um, Heidi McClenahan. I lead our Turner and Townsend investor project management business across the Americas. So at the beginning of this year, CBRE merged its project management business with Turner and Townsend as part of an ongoing strategic partnership. And my role in leading the advisory project management business, which means one-off kind of project management, not a dedicated project management business. Um, my role actually focuses on helping owners, landlords, and developers mitigate their risks and maximize their returns on investments by clearly understanding their ultimate goals of the construction project. So this could be helping them develop new structures from the ground up, repositioning aging assets to compete with neighboring buildings, converting assets into different building types and sectors. And it's all in the spirit of finding the best monetary outcome for our clients.
That's awesome. And I assume when you were 10 years old, you didn't know about investor project management and all this, everything you just said. So when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, I was a big dancer and I
Ooh.
probably lived in the studio every single day after school. So maybe I thought I might be a dancer one day. I definitely didn't think I'd ever be doing sort of public speaking like this that's being recorded. That
Yeah.
is not my strong suit. But, I got into this field because I did think when I was 14, so not when I was 10, but when I was 14, I thought I had a superpower. My parents were building their first home,
Mhm.
and I was the only person who could read a floor plan.
Oh my
I knew
gosh.
exactly when you walked in the front door, to the left was the kitchen, to the right was the family room. And I had two parents who were not in the real estate, not in construction or architecture. And I thought, oh my gosh, I have this superpower that I can totally visualize this home. So
And I
that's what
think
got me into
you
this world.
you still have that superpower, I think. I still think that is a legitimate superpower. And it's fun because I've heard from lots of scholars or people over the years that, oh, when they grew up, they loved Legos, or they loved being on a construction site and they loved building things. And then they went into real estate. But I've never heard the floor plan, like seeing that top-down visual and understanding how this building's going to work, how this apartment's going to feel a little bit. That's awesome. Um, and so my next question, you can either explain it to me like I'm five, or maybe explain it how you would to somebody who's not in the industry at all. But in just simple, basic terms, what is your job that we're going to talk about today?
Mm. Um, well, my job has been morphing and adjusting. So lately I feel like I'm blocking and tackling, and that's because I'm building something new during a major merger. I'm helping transform our business to respond to real estate that is ever changing. And I I come at real estate from a construction lens. And so what do I do? I started off as an architect. And when I was an architect, I I worked on any type of project. I didn't care what it was. I just wanted the deep experience of building something. I had a small stint in development, but that wasn't moving fast enough for me to get the on-site project experience. And so in my career, I have built high-end residential, mixed use, office space. I've done parking garages. I've done higher education repositioning of downtown buildings. I've done a lot of different types of construction projects. And when I was at Gensler, actually, in the architecture world as the project architect, I'd always been the owner's representative. I did not know that an owner's representative was a career path until I was looking for something that provided me a little bit more flexibility in my life. But also, I learned that I really appreciate the business side of architecture. I have a strong sense of how can we deliver the best products for the client, so a strong client advocacy. And it wasn't to me why I did architecture was to fill a portfolio of pretty designs.
Mhm.
So I started talking to as many people as I could, trying to gain a perspective of what is this industry that we're in. And two people called me on the same morning and they said, CBRE has just what you're looking for. And that was 13 years ago. And I had said, who is CBRE, which is
Mhm.
only the largest global real estate firm in the world. I called for an informational interview. I learned what an owner's representative was, which was ultimately an extension of the client. It had that strong client advocacy. Um, it it utilized my technical skills and honed my soft skills from a real estate relationship standpoint. And I said, this sounds too good to be true. When do I sign up? Where do I start? So I give you that background because I've done a lot of different things within this industry, which has afforded me, I think, the opportunity um, and the trust that my peers have provided to me to help lead an entire business sector because I understand at all levels what is required to do the work, but also recognizing from a client's perspective what we think that they may need and want and buy. So operating a P&L, leading a strategy, understanding what an operational excellence is, um, recognizing how many different skill sets that need to be brought to the table, leveraging the experts within the CBRE real estate world to really quarterback a client to solve all their needs when it's a environment that is not static, it's always changing, and people want to figure out how to make the smartest decisions. My goal is to arm them with the cliff notes of how to get there.
Awesome. And I think you're describing a lot of things of what I hear from scholars of why they want to be in commercial real estate, which is that there is this challenge of managing so many perspectives, so many asset classes, so many things are coming and going. And they don't necessarily want, maybe they got into it through architecture design, or maybe, you know, you get into the industry through one specific way, but you see these people like yourself who touch so many aspects of it. And yes, it's extremely challenging because it's so many aspects, but I think so many Goldie scholars and alumni kind of, that's why they're here. They're craving that kind of ability to have their hands in lots of different projects. But I want to touch on that last part, how you're saying you're arming them, your clients with what they need to make the right decisions. And your title is Investor Project Relations. So you're helping them also with their investments. And could you just explain a little bit more about the investor side of things?
I think when you think about the investor side, it's really how do you, a large part of the investment and the spend on a project or a spend on the investment is the project itself. right? Is how much are you paying for construction? And how do you know that you are utilizing that money in the right way? And that's where my particular team puts an entire framework around a construction project, and not just the project of let's hire the architect, let's hire the engineer, let's hire the general contractor, let's manage the budget, let's manage the schedule. What is the budget? How are we handling that? But there's a huge part upfront, even before the essence of a project, which is where we're leaning in, which is why this investor project management piece is more than just project management. I think this is what being part of an entity like Turner and Townsend, who has data, cost metrics, cost control, program framework. Those are key pieces that happen months before someone even decides, or years even, that someone decides to build an actual project. And if you can set it up in the front end successfully, then the rest of those dominoes start to fall a little bit more seamlessly. And that assurity is really what I focus on.
That's that's awesome. And um, what do you wish other people knew about your work? Is there like a common misconception, or whether it be with general real estate people or people you work with, that if they understood this thing about how you work, what do you think would be helpful?
Well, get me in as early as possible,
Yeah.
right? Think of me early, early, early. Someone's considering buying a piece of land. Maybe we should connect with Heidi and kind of round out what that would ultimately look like so
Mhm.
we can build the roadmap. We don't have to bring the client along for the ride yet, but now we understand so we can talk so much more eloquently in the front end. There's a real value in understanding people's objectives.
Mhm.
So it's not just about how technically good you are, for instance, delivering the construction piece, but it's important to know who's in the room with you, what success looks like for every single person around the table, instead of kind of jumping into, oh, this is the person who's going to deliver and execute that. I think it's a much broader perspective. So I guess the takeaway is I wish people brought me in a lot earlier instead of, can you fix this? Oh,
Mm,
we set these expectations. Oh, we thought we could do this in one phase. Well, why don't we plan for it appropriately and look at how much easier that is and how much more secure you feel in investing multi-million dollars in these opportunities.
completely. I mean, it sounds like, you're giving people a pathway, like here's a timeline, here's a path, here's how this can be successful. And yeah, that like, hey, can you go back and fix this? And there's no like giving more time, or, and there's no going back and fixing things in the past. So I think that's a good one. And
I think, I'm
yeah.
sorry to cut you
Go
off,
ahead.
but I think curating the right team of
Mm,
individuals, I have never had a project with the same individuals on a team.
mm,
And there's a reason for that because there's never a project that is ever the same.
yeah.
Real estate is local and it's super important for you to know that expertise where you are building and how you want to build.
And is that changed at all in the move from Seabury to Turner and Townsend? Like, did you have a larger team with Seabury? One of my questions on here is kind of the difference between large companies or boutique agencies. Is Turner and Townsend more boutique, or do you still have a lot of the same abilities to pick a team for a specific project?
Well, to put it in perspective, Turner and Townsend is 20,000 individuals right now globally. So we are by no means a boutique
Yeah.
uh, piece. And so you're leveraging the knowledge across the globe, across 20,000 individuals, and harnessing that data to feel really confident about what it is that, like what we're saying is real.
Mhm.
Um, I think in any large organization, I worked in a six-person firm to be able to do as many things as I possibly could. And now I'm working in a 22,000 person firm, which is part of 150,000 people, because Turner and Townsend is still a subsidiary or a partnership of CBRE. when Seabury has their quarterly reporting, we are its own vertical within that publicly traded company.
Mhm.
So we are still uniquely tied. And again, I couldn't do what I do in an investor world without my Seabury partners because they are definitely part of the solution. Um, but I also couldn't do what I do without the Turner and Townsend skill set of 75 years of cost and data analytics. That really is that powerful tool or the tip of the spear that investors really lean into. Um,
Do you feel like they lean into that more now than ever? Than this kind of data-driven world, AI and the prop tech and, trying to analyze so much data that's going on out there. Is that, over the course of your career, have you felt like it's been ramped up, or is this, I mean, of course, it's probably always been important, but could you speak to how maybe some of that data collection or data processing technology is changing your work world?
well, I think in an ever changing environment when money is really expensive, where do you lean? You try to lean back on the quantifiable data or metrics that will help you make a smart decision. It's no longer just, oh, I like this person. Let me trust this person. Let's just spend bazillions of dollars to hopefully do this in the right way. How do you find that assurity?
Mhm.
So I think it's a super powerful way um, to help clients. I think it's why a client would want to lean in. And these are clients, all different tiers of clients. It could be the REITs of the world. It could be the very large Blackstones of the world. It could be a small family office that has a lot of equity, and so we cater to all the different scales and all the different size and all the different ways of getting to the solution. I think data is key.
Mhm.
I think if you haven't been tracking that or even if you track it, if you don't know how to pull out the specificity, you're losing out. So AI is going to help with that. Um, I don't know. I think it's really, really important. I wanted to mention one thing about working in a large organization versus working in a small place. I think wherever you are, even if it's in a 20,000 person organization, you build your team, you create your world, and then you take all the components of what that world can give you to make it that much better. You're not in this huge city, alone all by yourself. You need to find your home that makes sense so that every day that you're stepping forward, you understand the progress that you're making.
Whew, yeah. I mean, and I think, market by market is what I hear too. It's like these huge companies, but, you know, not every market might suit you as a person, or maybe you just need to learn more about how you can fit into that market, and into that project. But sometimes I see that with the Seaberries, the Heinz of the world, it's like it really can depend on, it's not the same people all across the board. So, you have to figure out where you fit into it, right? Is that?
Absolutely. I think that you get satisfaction when you show up at work and you like the people that you're working with and that you appreciate the culture that, you're part of.
Hmm.
So it's a key component. So if you're in a large organization, it could feel overwhelming if you don't find your people and your purpose within that organization.
And so to pivot a little bit to that idea of culture, and operations, or I assume that you probably drive a lot of the culture for your team and how it works. Can you talk a little bit about how what you prioritize in making a great working world for your people, or how you've experienced going into Turner and Townsend, and that's like maybe a new culture, and navigating that, and how culture affects the way you work for both your personal world and your employees.
Sure. So yes, I've run very large teams, and I think team dynamics is critical to the success of any business. I think as a leader, you have to understand who each of your team members are, that they are people, they are whole people, and investing in them is a really important and essential. piece of your responsibility to grow a business. I think understanding where each and every one of your team members are in the moment, and then sitting down and recognizing that we should all have goals. Maybe the goal is I love what I do every day. I don't want to do anything different. Can you just keep giving me those opportunities?
Mhm.
Is a really good conversation. Or I'm hoping that I become a leader of this organization. Can you provide for me some stretch goals? Can we work through some smart tactics of how I can get where I want to be? If you can understand each and every one of your team members, recognize that everyone brings something different to the table, but then you as a leader has a responsibility to help them get to where they ultimately need to be. Like that's how you build culture,
Mhm.
because everyone, if people are happy with what they're doing every day, they're going to bring their best self. And who wouldn't want to work with people who are being their best selves? So I don't take it lightly. I think it's a very serious thing that not every leader does or focuses on. Um, and seeing it as a whole, because everyone brings something different to the table, recognizing what are you missing at the table?
Mhm.
You know, you could bring in one individual into a team and all of a sudden it feels different. Someone's the jokester of the group, or someone's very, very serious, and we all learn how to adapt and be almost like a little family.
Mhm.
And I think when you can make sure that each other, like everyone knows one another, is also an important thing.
Yeah.
Um, Culture also is about awareness of one another, which is what I was referring to. And I think as hard as we all work and as fast as we work, taking a moment to celebrate our successes individually and as a team is also a really important thing. So I know some companies have like ringing of the gong or ringing of the bell, and it's those are community opportunities to build awareness of, oh my gosh, we must be doing something great because that bell keeps going off. But hey, you, Mr. or Mrs. Someone, you did this, and recognizing that accomplishment, I think is a really good way to bring us all together.
Yeah.
At least
Yeah.
that's what I found when I made my own personalized gong for the team.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I
Love it.
did.
Um, and so I do kind of want to go back just a notch because I'm thinking about, someone who's watching this, interested in what you do. What would be some of your advice for someone who wants to follow your path per se? Maybe they came from the construction world or they didn't, but they are interested in this dynamic role that you're in where you touch a lot of different things. You're helping the client, strong client advocacy. What would be some of your advice for a scholar or a woman coming out of graduate school to navigate that path to where you are?
I think one of the hardest things is pivoting in life and taking a chance on learning something new. And I would encourage people to take those leaps of faith, because when you disrupt yourself, and even if it feels like a little bit of a step backwards,
Mm.
you just don't know where those journeys can take you. And I think hands-on real experience is critical to understanding how you can lead someone through that process, right? If you want to get into construction, be on construction sites,
Mm.
put that hard hat on and work with those superintendents and learn, deeply learn what their role is, what keeps them up at night, how you can learn from them. And it just makes what you bring to the table that much better. You know, if you are a architect or an engineer and you are drawing, but maybe you don't have to draw all of that. If you were in the field and you understood how it was getting built, perhaps it could be done in a better way. So I think the more experience that you can get hands on and not be afraid that, oh my gosh, I just expected myself to like shoot up the ladder and that's my goal in life
Mhm.
without taking this like lattice work to
Mhm.
get there. I just don't think you're giving yourself enough. Um, well, you need to gain experience.
Yeah, yeah. I was with Roxanne yesterday at oh, Roxanne, I forget what it's going to be called. It's like Bell Towers out in Hoffman Estates for
And
the
an incredible redevelopment.
incredible.
Hmm.
And I mean, one thing we are laughing about is that they have this huge model of the whole building, right? And Roxanne was saying how in architecture school they teach you how to spend a lot of hours like making little models, perhaps, where
Yes.
she like, so it's good to have that skill, but she was more interested in getting like out on the out what you're saying, getting experience, talking to people, being out in the world. Um, Understanding other people's perspectives in addition to making models, I
Well,
guess.
Kelsey, I would say take that example, right? I've built models. I have a master's in architecture. I have a scar on my middle finger from that X-Acto knife. When you're in a role where you're hiring someone to build a model, now you have some appreciation for how long it might take
Mm-hmm.
and also some awareness so that you know what the ultimate outcome should be because you've been there and you've done something like that. Probably not as well as the model builder today, but there's an appreciation for what it is you're truly asking. What is the price? How long is it going to be? And who is the right person to do this for me? And I think that if you take that example and you expand it to every aspect of building something, that's kind of what I'm talking about is try to gain as much experience as you can.
Yeah, whether by doing it or expanding your network and talking to people.
Yep.
One quick note, I used to love, I don't think I've seen it in a while, but Seabury, I think, did this thing where they did a social media feature where they would post employees like you and be like, this was their first job was this, and then they did this, and now they're here. It's kind of like if you go to the baseball games and they say like, how did they become a Cub? And they went all over the country. And I always thought that was such a cool feature because it really shows the different ladders that we all take. There's no one clear ladder to get to your position. You did it the way you did it because that was how your career went. And I thought that was a really cool feature.
Yes.
Um, and do you have any sorry, let me rephrase that. We've talked about some soft skills, right? Obviously, relationship building, networking, empathy, I would say, is kind of what you're talking about, understanding other people, where they're coming from. Do you have any tips on hard skills that Goldie Scholars or alumni would be beneficial to either sharpen or find a way to do more hard skills?
I mean, I don't know if organization is hard skills, or effective communication is really key. You can save yourself so much time if you send that one email that you read over a few times over just to make sure that the point is taken.
Mhm.
I think that's a big one for me and one that I'm always learning and practicing all the time. Slowing down for a
Mhm.
second and giving yourself some grace and time to think about what you're doing, not just constantly doing and reacting.
Mhm.
That's a blend of soft and hard skills. I'm pretty sure that every Goldie mentor that I work with thinks, or that I've been associated with, thinks that, oh, I got to be the best at financial modeling,
Yep. Yeah.
right? I mean, yes, having an awareness of financial modeling and depending on where you go in this field, that is a really important skill set that brings your creativity with your technical ability.
Mhm.
But no one's going to hire you because you're the best financial modeler ever,
Yeah.
right? So there's a variety of skill sets depending on what you lean into that will help you.
Yeah. Okay, so I have more questions, but I am going to ask you one more before I hand it over to Renee, Nicole, Linda, and Roxanne. So the four of you get your questions ready. But and I'll circle back to other questions I have. But um, my final question is, what are some recommendations that you have, books, podcasts, media that people could be absorbing, whether they're your personal recommendations or professional recommendations, if you will.
Yeah. I think it should be a blend. We are whole people. And while we work really hard all the time, I think it's really important to have some personal outlets as well. Um, I can tell you that the book I'm reading today is Never Split the Difference. Um, these are my professional books.
Mhm.
Never Split the Difference. Checklist Manifesto is another one that I recently picked up as I was thinking about building this framework and getting back down to the basics of how do we think about our business? What are the key components of how others should see our business and some of the decision-making factors? The Checklist Manifesto is really helpful. Um, and also because building a business is multifaceted. Building a Story Brand was another one that I've recently read to help you articulate your value proposition. But as far as podcasts go, and by the way, I do a lot of audiobooks as well because we're always multitasking. Um, I like Mel Robbins. I'm sure people have mentioned her. The Let Them theory is super powerful. In fact, I bought the book for my mother recently. So I think it's cross-generational and it's really, you can apply those lessons no matter if it's personal or professional, however, wherever you're at in a stage of life. So I appreciate her words of wisdom. She's kind of like our new Oprah, right?
Mhm.
Um, I don't know. Those are just a few off the top of my
That's
head.
perfect. Awesome. Okay. I will add those to our list, our growing list of recommended books and podcasts by experts in CRE. Does anyone have a question for Heidi? You can either go off mute and ask it yourself or type it to me and I'll ask it for you.
I do.
Hi.
Hi, Heidi. We talked maybe like a year ago or something. I don't know if you remember me. Um, so I own my own little business and I do some owner's rep stuff like you do. I'm sure not anywhere to the scale or competence that you do it, but I had a couple questions. Um, so sometimes I struggle with how to structure my fees just because every project's different. So it's tough to know what you should be charging. Like is it an all lump sum at the beginning? Is it hourly? And if it is the lump sum and not the hourly, if you're kind of going over what you had thought that it might take, are you just eating that cost or how do you look at that?
It's a great question, especially because what you think the project is going to be in the beginning is never what it ends up being at the end. So, as an owner's representative, we're consultants. So it's really a function of our time with our effort that we put towards the project or for the client. So I'm always creating a work stream or a, a f- a schedule of what I think the project will take to the amount of hours I think I will have to put towards that project. And then I look at what I've charged people in the past and I keep a good record of was I profitable? Was I not profitable? Where did that land? What is happening there? But I also then take into consideration my competition. What is the industry dictating that I can actually charge? So looking at it all across the board. And also what's on your plate today? How much time can you give to this particular project? I I prefer a monthly rate if I can ask for it. But I think you need to build trust with your client to get to that point. And I'm not opposed to charging someone hourly to show them my worth and my value, to then get to a point in the project to say, okay, now we've defined the parameters and I feel really comfortable with this budget and this schedule. Here's my lump sum fee. Let me balance it across the 12 months that this project is, and this is ultimately what I will charge you during the duration of the project. And we can do some true ups throughout the process. I found that to be easy for a client to digest so that every month they know what they're paying you. I found it easy from an AR book that
Mm-hmm.
um,
You know what's coming in?
you know what's coming in and you can forecast that pipeline and understand what is expected. So that's how I like to do it. Is the more complex the projects become, then I like to break it down into phases. So it's just a little bit easier for a client to digest. And I'll forecast out for future phases based on my general assumptions. This would be the range of what you'd expect me to be charging you. And that gives them some comfort that they're not just along for the ride, that this is a partnership.
That's great advice. Thank you. And I do have other questions if other people don't have other questions, but I want to give other people a chance to ask questions too.
All right. Linda?
Yeah, I have one question. Hi, Heidi. Thank you
Hi.
for being here with us. I come from a background that's heavy finance, and I don't really have any experience with construction, but it comes up constantly on projects and trying to understand from the financial lens what it even is coming up next. Do you have any advice for how to get educated on construction and learn the general steps of the process? And just, I don't know if there's resources or anything you could think of would be helpful.
Well, I think coming from a finance background, you're probably like, just tell me how much this is going to cost so I can plug this in and move on, right? Or how much money do I need to know and give me some assurance that it's um, is accurate. And I think it is a constant question. Your best bet is, I don't know, having a partner who's going to give you those unsolicited advice on your particular project that you might be financing. There isn't a book to read or an estimating tool that is like a perfect thing for you to reference. I don't know if you work in a particular asset type or if you are constantly building like the same types of projects, because over time, then you'll get to know, oh, that's $150 a square foot. And I know that that's, twice that in this other region. And you can sort of kind of do some ballpark as you gain more experience. But I think it's likely just knowing the right person to ask the question to say, hey, my client is looking to invest and build a medical office building in Chicago and in Phoenix. Can you like give me some sense of what that even starts to look like?
Mhm.
It's not a great answer, but
No, I feel like I
I,
got it. Yeah, finding the right people to help support if something's even close to.
well, sure. And I think it works both ways,
Yeah,
right? So there's no one-stop shop. But finding someone who has some deep construction experience can give you some really good inputs to help you recognize maybe the next questions to ask.
yeah. Well, thank you.
And Heidi, are you at a point in your career where like all the kind of data and knowledge you need is really within CBRE, Turner and Townsend, or do you still go to your network to ask questions about work, if you will?
Go to my network all the time, also to validate that the people, that are my peers even have the right answer.
Hmm.
I think it's super important. I mentioned this earlier, that real estate is a local business. And so really diving into people in each market who really understand cost, municipality, ordinances, permits, incentives, all of those things are not up here. They are down here and they're constantly changing. And so my network is hugely valuable to me. And I like to find the different niches and the different places that people live to help me be smarter. Like,
Hmm.
because I'm the least smart in the room. I just like to bring all the smart people to the room.
It's the way to be. I will never forget my first job ever, my first boss. He was great. And he told me, he's like, you're only as valuable as your network. And I was like, well, I must be so unvaluable because I was 22 and my network is like my parents, I hadn't been networking, but what's funny is that it was my network that got me into the Gold Initiative, right? I knew somebody who was on the board of TGI. So it really is true. Although it was intimidating when I first started and I had never heard of networking really. It doesn't I think for probably, in my opinion, one of the most important things about the Goldie Initiative, like money's great, even mentoring's great, but if you can have access to this big network and like anybody in the Goldie Initiative network is a warm introduction at that point, you know? So that can be so valuable.
I think with your network too, it's really important to be open to working with new people,
Mm,
to give others opportunities that to prove themselves, but to make sure that you do your own due diligence and it's the right person. So it does work both ways, but you're only as good as you are as you continue to give other opportunities, and we have like a broader perspective of what we can bring. And I think that's a super important thing.
mhm. Great. I don't know if Nicole or Renee have a question, but give you, oh, Renee.
No, I don't have a question, but this has been really wonderful
Oh,
to
thank you.
listen to. I mean, really, you've had some very interesting perspectives that are just like aha moments.
Mhm. Awesome.
So thank you for your time.
You're so welcome.
Thanks, Renee. I'm glad you could come. Roxanne, I'm going to kick it back to you then. Do you have what was another one of your questions?
I love it. Thanks, Kelsey. Um, Heidi, another like people managing question. You had talked about the importance of kind of understanding what your people's individual goals are and how they differ from one another. Question is like tactically, how do you find out those things? Are you like what's your cadence for meeting with them? Is that a conversation that's just happening at annual reviews, or is that happening more often? And are you approaching them? Are they approaching you? How do you find like tactically is the best way to get that understanding that you were talking about from your people? Because some people are more apt to like be assertive about telling you those things than others. So what's your approach to that?
For sure. That all resonates with me. I guess first and foremost, I set my own team goals and socialize those really early on in the year so that we can all like establish the swim lanes and where we're headed and how we want to where we want to go. And then that sets the cadence for me to say, well, now you know where the team or where I want us to be. Take some time to yourself and create your own goals. I mean, I'll have a framework, and then there's always a spot for them to fill in exactly what it is that means something to them from a personal level, but also professional level. So I break it down into both. Like you can tell me that you are hoping to become the best skier in the world. And that's great because now I know you have a passion for skiing, and that's like a piece of your life that I learn about. Um, so establish the framework of the business, share it. Then I have some 5 goals that feed up to that framework that I want to get their feedback on, and that if they make sure that they understand it, I give them opportunity to create their own personal and professional goals. I sit with them in Q1, and we have a one-on-one session to say, yeah, it makes sense, got it, sounds good, great. How are those measurable? Because oftentimes, even though you talk about the SMART goals, people don't put the measurement to it. They just have like these lofty aspirations, which I think is a disservice to trying to accomplish your goals. So I can come in and help them with that specificity if they don't have it. And then we tend to meet in July again to say, okay, how's it going? Here's your check-in. Here's your formal check-in. But I should say, I've always kept the door open to say, anytime you want to talk about your goals, where the business is headed, your opportunities, what are the projects, I'm always an open door. And I want to sit down with anyone at any time. Now, you have to have some boundaries because some people may take that very
Mhm.
literally and always be calling you at every moment. And you want to respect that, but also, we have a business to run and we want to make sure that it's not just about them, it's about the greater whole.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I try to meet at least 3 times a year because then we meet again towards the end of the year. How did it go? Were you feeling? Did you succeed? What kept you not succeeding if there was a goal we didn't get to? And then what do you hope for in the next year so that when I put together my goals for the following year, it's taking into account some of the feedback that I had received.
Mhm. That's great advice. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I have
I got,
maybe a small question um, that I'm just so curious about. Again, looking at your resume, your LinkedIn, you seem to have touched so many asset classes. And I don't know if it's all of them are available to you at any given time, but just do you have a favorite asset class to work on?
It's a great question. It's not an asset class. I guess I got into this business because I love adaptive reuse and I have like
Mm,
a deep passion for it. Um I practiced or I put together a thesis about how the old and the new come together. So I always have a soft spot for finding historic spaces, or it doesn't even have to be like a landmarked space. It could just be something that has a lot of character, and how we can transform and breathe in new life into that structure is probably like what I would geek out on, because it comes with a lot of constraints, so that
mm-hmm.
challenges my problem solving skills, but it's also respect to like heritage and history. And I, I think that what we sometimes build today is not as strong and sturdy as what has been built in the past. And I think that that craftsmanship should be something that's celebrated. So,
Definitely. And again, I have to shout out to Bell Works and Hoffman Estates. That
mhm.
was an incredible space. And I learned something from Roxanne, which is that she could tell it was a historic reuse because they had all the glass cube windows, like a huge wall of glass cubes, which only probably comes from historic reuse because people don't quite buy those kind of cube glasses anymore. So that was a cool fun fact I learned.
Yeah.
Roxanne, do you have other questions?
I do. Do we have time or do we
We
need to
we do
cut
have
off?
time. We have about
Okay.
10 more minutes, so yeah.
Okay. Another tactical business leadership type question for Heidi. What's your approach to balancing giving your team members autonomy, but also holding them accountable? And I know that like generally a big component of that answer is communication. But like, can you drill down on that more? Like how is that communication happening and at what frequency so that it's not feeling like micromanagement, but also that like you're kept in the know enough that you feel connected to what everyone's doing and you know that they're on track.
Mhm.
Oh, that's a hard one. Um, I think you have to be real with yourself about how much time you have in a day. And if you need to build some additional trust and rapport with someone, maybe just directly adjacent or under you, where you can trust and that can be an executive on your side to dive into some of the project management that might be happening, boots on the ground that you want to learn about, but you just don't have enough time in the day to know all of the projects that you're doing. So, Kelsey, you had mentioned how I've touched so many different asset classes. I've touched so many also because I have people that I work with that I trust who are really good at what they do. And they've taught me a lot about the variety of asset classes. And they are my SME go-to individuals where I still get a flavor and an understanding and comfort in what it is we're delivering. But I'm also relying on that next tier of individuals to help give that formation. Does that help you, Roxanne?
Yeah, that's good advice. Kind of having like a second in command that you really trust to kind of
Correct. Thanks
give
for
them that voting
summarizing that.
office baton. Yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
Well, and I think the autonomy and the work from home and all of the trust factors of managing people, it's super challenging right now. And so setting expectations and being pretty rigid with those, but also acknowledging that maybe your business wants to provide flexibility to retain the talent that you have, but not making sure that people aren't taking advantage of that. I think it's just being really clear on that expectation and holding strong to it. I
Yeah, that's
it
definitely the challenge that I'm
yeah,
working through right now. Yeah.
I have no doubt. I mentor and talk to a lot of young women and men, but a lot of women reach out to me. And some of these women's goals are like, oh, well, my goal is just to work from home. And you're like, well, wait, like back up. That's not a professional goal, right? So
Mhm.
why don't we talk about what you're really looking for? And it, and if you're interested in a career or just a job. And
Mhm.
those two things are really important to understand the talent on your team. If you're here for a job and it's 9 to 5, now I know what that is. I know what types of projects I should be providing
Mhm.
to you, and I know what guardrails I need to give to you. And
Mhm.
frankly,
Mhm.
I know what I'm going to pay and invest in you.
Mhm.
If you
Right.
want a career, that's a different conversation.
Yep. That's good advice. And you do need some of those worker bee type people, but it's good to know which are which. Yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah.
like you said. I have one more quick one that kind of goes along with what she said in terms of like having enough time in the day. Heidi, what's your approach to like what you decide to do yourself versus what you delegate to others?
Oh, I'm really bad at delegating, and I need to be better at it. It's a great question. If it's taking me too long to think about how I'm going to get to where I need to be, I start to bring more and more people in.
Hmm.
It's just checking in with myself, I guess. Like, is this a good use of my time? Do I know someone who can do this better and faster than I can? And then let me reach out and see if I can gain some of that um, experience or expertise on my side.
Mhm.
So it's really just an informal check-in. I wish I could say I had some framework or Excel document, but I do not. Um,
And then like how do you balance that with if you're this is just devil's advocate. If you're doing that and you're kind of keeping tasks that you're better at and delegating tasks that you're not as good at to others, like are you not growing? Like are you not gaining new knowledge for yourself?
I
I
think,
feel that way sometimes. That's why I'm asking it that way.
no, I don't. I think if you are, well, if you don't put yourself in a place that you're constantly learning and you're doing some new tactics, then perhaps. I think if you remain curious and you push the limits and you're learning something new every day or doing something that scares you every day, then you are growing. And it may not be at the speed that you imagine in your mind, but putting your foot forward every single day and acknowledging what you've been able to accomplish, I think shows you that you are growing.
Great advice. Thanks so much for answering all my questions.
Of course, anytime.
I second that. And, you know, I know, Roxanne started her own development company, right? And so, Roxanne, I think you're doing just fine learning new things. You're in, you're in the heat of it all, doing it all, and you'll look back and be like, wow, I grew a lot during that time. At least that's what I predict, at least.
Appreciate the encouragement.
Yeah. Um, and not to make it the Roxanne show, but similar to Heidi, what you're doing now, Roxanne, for the first time ever, was on a panel yesterday at the Bell Works Biz Now thing. So, like, I think those types of experiences that also grow. I mean, one final question I have is that I already know the answer to, so I almost feel silly talking about it, is like, uh, getting involved in groups in the industry, being on panels, being a speaker, how has that influenced your career and how you work? Being PWCC, it's just there's so much opportunity out there to get involved.
Well, it comes back to that network, right, Kelsey? We're in a relationship business. This industry is forever morphing and changing. And I think too that um, as I get older, how do I stay in tune and in touch with the talent that's coming into our sector? And that's a big one, why I like to mentor, why I like to be in a variety of organizations. It's more about how we're seen and how we can do things better as a whole, rather than, well, how can I promote myself? That's never what it's about.
Mhm. But at the same time, it's like about I do talk to scholars about their brand too, and kind of like that the book and the content you're talking about with building a story brand is like if you're a part of the community and you're building your network, it also puts you out there as someone who loves your community. And then that's part of your brand. And that's, you being giving back built comes into your brand in such a positive way. And I always say that's what makes the Sheroes too with the Gold Initiative, right? It's like not just that they're really good at their job, but it's also that they go out there and they give back and they share their knowledge and they're, like you said, trying to absorb knowledge and talk to the next generation of women and men in commercial real estate and elsewhere. So
Yeah.
I think that'll be it. Heidi, thank you so much
You're so
for
welcome.
this hour. I really enjoyed talking to you. Honestly, I could probably talk to you for a lot longer. And thank you for all of our attendees. This will be recorded and put on Goldie Central. But yeah, thanks, Heidi.
Well, thanks for asking. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy your Friday.
Thanks very
Thanks,
much.
everyone.
Happy weekend, everybody.